despair of Australia?
If the world gets much hotter, then we all know that the weather extremes will be dire. Some forests are very combustible. It will be like a funeral pyre.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a whole policy. I don't know the details myself. Flats, so that people in big shared apartments can ensure that they can all get the right charge.
Does this include electric cars?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you say a lot of electric cars?
I am hanging out to get an electric car.
Okay.
Do you want an electric car? Well, good luck with that one. This is Docklands Melbourne. Apartment owners are wanting chargers for electric cars. The power supply in the buildings were designed for the loads in the building with virtually no spare capacity for electric car chargers. According to electricians responding to requests for chargers, a building of 180 odd apartments may only accommodate 5 chargers. If you've lived in a Melbourne apartment building, you would understand each car space is strictly allocated to each apartment. So which apartments are going to get them? Car park subboards cannot carry the extra loads of even one charger and would have to be upgraded on car park floors with a charger, as would the supply mains to each subboard. Main switchboards would then have to be upgraded to add the heavier circuit breakers for the sub-mains upgrade. When Docklands was designed, a limit was put on the number of apartments in each precinct and the mains and transformers in the streets designed accordingly. This means there is no capacity in the Docklands street grid for any significant quantity of car chargers in any building in the area. The whole CBD, Docklands and Southbank, is fed by 2 substations, one in Port Melbourne and one in West Melbourne. This was done to have 2 alternate feeds in case one failed or was down for maintenance. Because of the growth in the city, Docklands and Southbank, now neither one is capable of supplying the full requirement for Melbourne zone at peak usage in midsummer if the other is out of action. An entire overhaul of the system here would be necessary to accommodate any serious increase in electric cars. In suburban Melbourne, for a typical suburban street, the electrical infrastructure might be able to carry 3 houses with a single Tesla each. Recent trials conducted by Origin Energy found that the increasing in demand of electric vehicles will increase electricity demand by 30 and 100%. To move away from existing energy production and delivery methods, while we export all of our coal overseas, we need to overhaul the entire production and delivery system of electricity. And that's what the plan is for the next 25 years in Victoria.
We're using sunshine, mostly the sunshine, somewhere that breathes when skies are grey. Water gets heated, it feels defeated, so switch to the sunshine today.
The Victorian Government released its Zero Emissions Vehicle, or ZEVs, roadmap in 2021 to ensure the state is a leader in the adoption of zero-emission vehicles, ZEVs, in Australia. This included a target for 50% of all new light vehicle sales to be ZEVs by 2030. According to the Victorian Government, the shift to greener, cleaner, renewable energy will deliver affordable, reliable, and secure electricity we need for the future. It will help us deal with climate change by meeting our emissions reduction targets. But will it?
So we need to get rid of that undemocratic system. We need to get rid of that barbaric system and fight for a world where ordinary people are prioritised over the needs of the rich and powerful.
Someone else did the maths on running an electric car. Put simply, you pay twice as much for a car that costs more than 7 times to run and takes 3 times longer to drive across the country. And Australia is a big, big country. How green is an electric car? This machine is required to move 500 tonnes of earth ore, which will be refined into one lithium car battery. It burns nearly 1,000 gallons of fuel in a 12-hour shift. Lithium is refined from the ore using sulfuric acid. The proposed lithium mine at Thacker Pass, Nevada, is estimated to require up to 75 semi-loads of sulfuric acid a day, which then has to be disposed of. Very toxic to the environment. A battery in a typical electric car is made of 11 kilograms of lithium, 27 kilograms of nickel, 20 kilograms of manganese, 13.5 kilograms of cobalt, 90 kilograms of copper, and 181 kilograms of aluminium, steel and plastic, etc. With some batteries being larger, they average around 340 to 453 kilograms of minerals. All has to be mined from different mining sites to create something that stores electricity. The Victorian government also want to have electric buses and trucks, which will require even more mining and more minerals per battery. The electricity to power these batteries is proposed to come from solar panels and wind turbines, which in themselves require amounts of minerals that dwarf these ZEV batteries to be mined, transported, manufactured and transported again. The Victorian government also wants to do away with residential, commercial and industrial gas uses and say that Victoria's electricity demand will potentially be several times higher than the current level. Several may be an underestimate.
What we need is a gas retirement roadmap. Retire the gas mains network over the next 10 years, the critical decade for climate change. We have 10 years to turn this ship around. Climate justice looks like a plan to help the lower income households that are paying a disproportionately high gas bill because of our homes being leaky and uneconomic, helping us to transition off gas and onto renewables and returning power to the people. The only future for Victoria, for Australia and for the world is for us to lead the way in embracing renewables, switching off gas, shutting down coal mines. No more gas, no more oil.
Keep the carbon in the soil.
A key near-term priority in this transition is to ensure that we are prepared for the likely early closure of Victoria's coal-fired power plants. If they are to be retired early, do we then have to pay out the Chinese-owned energy suppliers and energy makers? What will the cost be? Who knows? Before existing coal-fired power stations will be closed, numerous solar, wind and hydro farms need to be made and produce far more electricity than is currently being produced. So far, we have one known cost. In 2020, while the governments shut down everyone's capacity to earn a living, the Victorian Labor government set up an initial RES fund of $540 million. Basically, that money is strengthening existing grids while a bunch of bureaucrats investigate geographical areas in Victoria for the major solar and wind farm projects that will be built later. The money has gone into developing this map of where the proposed pathways will be. You can see 6 major corridors in Victoria which have been identified as appropriate areas to have such farms. These are called optimal RES pathways. The optimal RES pathway would be a set of transmission projects to be delivered in stages over the coming 25 years. These pathways will be narrowed down into what are called microsites. Microsites will be at least 1 kilometre in width, but not sure how long just yet. Here is a picture of a microsite overseas. All these microsites will need to be interlinked, a monumental task by itself, so that energy can be transported around Victoria. And now might be a good time to mention, we certainly don't want blackouts, which can destroy massive amounts of food, medical resources, and all things perishable rather quickly. No detail is provided on how they will be interlinked or what the costs will be.
house is on fire and it's time our government started putting it out. And when your house is on fire, you call the fire brigade. Opening up new coal and gas projects in a time of climate crisis is a threat to our children's and our grandchildren's survival, and it is making the floods and fires that we are experiencing even worse. We can do it in a way that gets us to 100% renewable energy here at home as quickly as we possibly can by building those new projects, building the new transmission lines that will provide good, decent jobs.
Send you boys out for a few months?
So the next 25 years is dedicated to completely changing the production and delivery of energy in Victoria. To, as government documents put it, these changes would make an important contribution to the Victorian government's goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050. One might want to include the life expectancy of solar panels and wind turbines. Repairs typically start in the first 10 years, from minor repairs to the entire replacement of defective wind turbines and solar panels, and they have a life expectancy of roughly 20 years. So this is an ongoing produce and replace system. If every single solar panel and wind turbine was installed today, every single solar panel and wind turbine would have been replaced by 2050. And then again by 2070 and 2090 and 2110. So keep doubling the costs of these microsites. What do they cost? We have no idea in the 120 odd pages of documents provided. What then happens to these products once their life expectancy has passed? Well, they can be buried, apparently. Again, no mention in any of the documents. So where do we get our solar panels from? Roughly 90% of solar panels are imported from China, and we have spent many billions of dollars in subsidies, taxes, paying for these, which becomes a hidden green tax and a major reason why electricity prices have gone up. You, your kids, and your kids' kids are going to have to pay for this ongoing project for the goal of reducing the temperature in Victoria by an average of 0 degrees Celsius. While various groups try and convince us that the world is going to be too hot in the coming years, keep in mind we are still coming out of an interglacial period, one of 25 in the Pleistocene Ice Age.
The planet is burning and flooding simultaneously. Our new Labor government won't commit to the climate targets that we need. They won't commit to take the action to keep global warming below 2 degrees. And keeping it below 2 degrees is not even enough.
These groups use the increase in temperature over the last 150 years of industrialisation to help justify their claims of extreme heat. However, the temperature had already increased this much in the 150 years prior because, yes, we are still coming out of a major glaciation. However, due to various reasons, which I won't go into here, the increase of temperature has also been exaggerated. But if you think the Conservatives, in name only, Liberals, in Victoria are going to be any different, they are proposing even stronger measures to go up the green garden path. And there have been, since Howard era, when they actually started this. And that's even after the recent Liberal federal government put this country into the worst debt we've witnessed in our lifetimes. And that was just for responding to a pandemic that from March 2020 was known to be less than 1% infection fatality death rate. Now, whenever you want to start a business or develop a project that requires funding, you 100% absolutely have to understand and demonstrate the cost. Why then doesn't the government, with our money, have to do this and spend $500 million to still not explain the cost at all? After Victorians have been abused for 2 years, children suffered terribly, businesses decimated, a mental health catastrophe, and the list goes on and on, the Victorian Labor and also Liberal governments are now telling you that the most expensive project in Victoria's history is all about saving you money while saving the planet.
As the climate crisis rolls on, the profits of the fossil fuel companies continue to grow and grow and grow.
The Victorian government has absolutely none of our taxes in reserve. There's no surplus of funds to draw from to pay for this multi-decade project, and over 100,000 taxpayers have recently escaped Victoria for good. Not only do we not have a surplus to draw from, we are now paying, and for a long time into the future, interest on the debt that we now have. And that's no small amount. How much interest on debt are we paying? That's your homework. And while reading through these 120 pages across multiple documents, I came across an interesting proposed change to the tendering process proposed. Putting projects or parts of projects to tender is supposed to make projects economically competitive and therefore cheaper for us, taxpayers. Currently, something that costs more than $10 million needs to go to tender. This is already high. The proposed change would increase this 10 times, up to $100 million. Meaning that if a company says something will cost $45 million, the government can say, yep, go ahead, no worries. They don't need to put this cost up for tender, and there is no private sector competition. Then if something costs between $50 and $99.9999 million, a few pre-selected contenders are chosen, and the government can say, yep, we'll go with our mates. Only jobs over $100 million would be put up for the normal and existing tender process. Let me say that again, over $100 million. Keep in mind that Dan Andrews' Labor government no longer have their One Belt, One Road Chinese Communist Party agreement and supply of existing funds and behind doors business dealings. Dan Andrews' Labor government was perfectly happy to deal with the Chinese Communist Party, who are committing genocide on the Uyghur Muslims who happen to be in the way of the One Belt, One Road trade routes east of China. Yet we would trust his government with fair business practices here on this project, where tenders are proposed to now sit above $100 million.
The Socialist Party does not support Falun Gong, but we do support the right of the Uyghurs to self-determination.
FIRB, the Foreign Investment Review Board, essentially signed off on all foreign investments from China and is run by as many people as it takes to run a corner cafe. There is huge potential for corruption, but raising the need for tender to over $100 million basically alleviates the need for underhand corruption anyway. While being told to lower electricity consumption at certain moments in time, we are simultaneously being told to rely more heavily on electricity. The infrastructure expenditure required would dwarf the NBN cost, which has been gargantuan. The desalinity plant is nothing compared to this project. Are we still paying $1 million a day to keep the desalinity plant on standby for when we have no more water in our dams? Homework question number 2. But let's forget all that with a happy quote from the Victorian government. These changes would make an important contribution to the Victorian government's goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050. We're all in this together. Literally this time.
We are locked into an unhealthy
economic energy system. Shame!
Thank you for watching my video. As well as these videos, I'm also creating an education resource platform called True Arrow Academy of Critical Thinking, or TACT for short. TACT will be an alternative education resource platform that's non-woke and non-indoctrinating, with each lesson being a potential turning point in a young learner's understanding on a range of important topics. TACT will evolve into many hundreds of animations and filmed lessons written, run and influenced by an exceptional mix of academic heavyweights teaching against the grain, with lessons encouraging open discussion, critical thinking and debate. TACT's duty of care is to arm and shield you against modern, subversive, mainstream education. Supporters will be the lifeblood of TACT. If you would like to support this project, let's build this together at givesendgo.com/TACT. Thank you so much.